Well, hello, folks, and welcome to another OKD working group meeting. We're running a little behind here. There's a few folks that are on another call, and hello, and we're waiting to see if Christian can join us, but I will kick it off here a little bit, and you should be able to see my screen, hopefully, everybody. If you can't, please let me know. We're using the GitHub OpenShift Community Projects /1 as the agenda item driving portion of the day. And I just wanted to let people know that if you're coming to DevConf in Brno in the Czech Republic at the end of January, we did get a talk accepted. And the talk is called The Road to OKD4, Operators, Fedora CoreOS, and K8s. And I'm pretty sure Danny, myself, and Christian Glumbeck are the three speakers for that, but we will happily incorporate other people who are present as well, as we are wont to do. I also have requested an OKD working group meeting room, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it, but they haven't told me the location and date yet. So hopefully we can bring together some of the Fedora CoreOS folks, the OKD folks, and other people who are attending at that event and get that done and have another little bit of time, because we did have a really nice working group meeting at the KubeCon event last week. We had, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 people in the room. It helped, just build some awareness of OKD4, as well as Christian did a lightning talk, the recording of which I will add a link to in here on Monday the 18th at the OpenShift Commons gathering. And I will add the link in and ask you all to take a look, give us feedback, and hopefully retweet and socialize it so we can get the word out. And the big ask really at both of those things was for people to give feedback and test OKD4 based on the documentation and the alpha release that we have. And we got some buy-in from a couple of folks from GE and North Carolina University of North Carolina, and a couple of others who've said that they would test it as well. So that's been helpful and moved, hopefully, the testing back. Hey, Neil. I'm just looking to see if Christian or Clayton has joined. Not sure where Christian is, but Clayton, if you want to add anything, any feedback from the face-to-face time that we had at KubeCon, that would be helpful.
It was the discussion, I think, got into more roadmap style items, and so that did kind of call out that I still have an open to-do to pull together kind of an overarching roadmap. So Derek is helping me review kind of a first draft, and I'll share that with the working group when there's something there to review. It's still kind of in a proto form, so it's not really a complete thought yet. There was a couple of other topics. I would say we spent most of our time talking, when we were talking about OKD, explicitly talking about focus of flexibility and just doing some validation of assumptions around the folks who were in the room and how they felt about certain types of flexibility. And certainly, at least for the 2 representative samples there, it was how flexible does OKD really need to be in order to satisfy their goals versus maybe some of the broader goals that others in the community have. And they tended to lean a little bit towards the less flexible was necessary when it came to some of the premises of OKD, but that's a topic we've kind of already queued up for a future discussion in the working group anyway. So that was just
What just happened? I'm hearing so much random.
Yeah, that was me. I was just making sure everybody who could mute or who could talk could mute, but I've just muted whomever that was speaking in German.
Yep. So So then just I think we'll need to queue that up. We need to have a broader discussion about now that we at least have some of the elements of Fedora CoreOS working, folks who want more flexibility in how OKD is deployed, what the concrete path might be for that. It would be a good topic for a future discussion.
So I got one email came in this morning early from Charo, who's not able to attend this morning, and it sort of raised the question that I really had is, I'll read what he said. He said he's not able to attend, but he's managed to deploy Metal 3 on his Intel NUC lab environment, and he's ready to set it up and do some testing and build a clouder with a bit of guidance and assistance. And he's asking a question that I asked in the meeting as well, is how do we want to get feedback and what do we want tested with this current release? And I don't think that's totally clear. We did kind of say we're going to use the issues list in GitHub for that, but that's what I was hoping that Christian had done a little bit of work clarifying that, and I don't see him on the call, and I've tweaked him a little bit here, so I'm kind of curious as to what our next steps are for getting feedback from people because we have put it out there and requested it. So I'm not sure, Clayton, if you remember where we landed on which GitHub repo we should be tracking and doing feedback to.
I mean, at this point, if people want to open issues, let's just do it in OpenShift/OKD. That was referenced in the I had to put something into the README, so I just put OpenShift/OKD as that target.
Okay.
So the issues on that should be sufficient, and then we need to sort out. Honestly, I think we're going to have better long-term outcomes with the infrastructure integration we have for code across components if we can turn them into Bugzillas. But I think that's a future discussion to translate code into issues, into PRs, into fixes. Because there's just so much cross-product, cross-project, cross-community stuff that any one issues list tends to die a little bit.
Yeah. So if for now we can land on this, I'm curious as to other people who are on the call, though, and Christian's joining now, I can see that popping up, but what's the best thing to ask people like Charo or UNC or GE besides please just try and deploy it and spin up a cluster and give us your feedback on that? Is there something beyond that we should be asking people in this initial alpha release to be testing? Is there anything that would test the use of Fedora CoreOS? Anything like that people have? Or is it simply right now we just want to make sure it deploys, spins up a cluster, and things behave normally?
Well, what is normal?
Well, yeah. Therein lies. Is there any sort of testing suite right now?
Yeah, we run the standard test suites for cross repo stuff, the same ones that we had in 3x, just more expanded. Those are run right now. I think the biggest challenge is that the branches for Fedora CoreOS need to get merged into master branches, and so those are some of the items that are on Christian's roadmap. If we can't get those things merged in, they just tend to drift, and then we break somewhere between 3 to 4 weeks in as changes go into the installer or that. So that's the Ignition 3 work, a number of elements around GoMod support, and a couple of the repos. I think those are ones that just need. Once those are merged into a master branch, I think then we move into that next phase. As long as they're branches, they're always going to have this. They're not going to be able to keep up with the pace of change.
Yeah. So the other thing that I've been asking people, since there's not really a workload or anything to request there, for people to test certain specific things on running on there, is to tag where they're deploying it, so that we know that it deploys on bare metal with the metal cube stuff, or on Amazon. So to get a variety of places where people have actually deployed it, so we know that it has a successfully run on different clouds and different places. So that's the only other ask that I have, really, is to get that variety in.
We should talk about this too. So we had a couple issues that required Fedora CoreOS changes. We need to get that process, kind of the handoff there, and what someone would do. Vadim, I don't know if he took a record of this, but it was he went through the process of trying to get an NFS utils package bump because it didn't work in Fedora, but it did on RHEL, and so the upstream EDE tests failed. So that process of identifying what needs to be changed in Fedora CoreOS, who to talk to, where to go to open bugs, and then how to make sure it makes it back in. I think Vadim would be a good person to document what he did there and use that as the basis for some iteration doc while we're still in the preview phase.
All right.
Hi everyone, this is Christian. Sorry for joining in late. Had another meeting running.
Okay. Good morning. Sorry about that. So Christian, you should be able to speak. Unmute.
Yeah.
Yep, go for it. So
Okay. Yeah.
So just to level set, Christian, we did get our talk accepted for DevConf, so you've probably seen that, and we just sort of walked through quickly a little bit of feedback from Clayton and myself on the face-to-face time we had at KubeCon last week, and I was wondering if we could get an update from you this morning on OKD4 and a review of the open engineering tasks.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working on getting the MCO work with Spec 3 and Spec 2 in one branch, which would essentially give us the possibility to go back to just using one branch and not having the FCOS branch on the machine config operator repository. So that would be nice. And then that's the thing that may be out by like 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get their next sprint. I don't think the MCO team will have time this sprint to review it. So what I've been doing today is rebasing the FCOS branches on top of current masters. So we could just cut another alpha release that is just more up to date with current master, current OCP. That's sort of what I'm.
And I'm going to note, and part of the reason for that is there's like 3 or 4 big things merging in a very short time frame. So the cluster etcd operator is merging, and that's going to change the bootstrapping flow somewhat. I don't anticipate it affecting FCOS, but that's nature of the beast. It probably will. And then I know there's a couple of things queued up for 4.4 that might be somewhat dramatic, including IPv6 support and so forth as those start to come out. So it's hard to, I think if we can't get into a spot where these are in master, which is what I was saying before you joined, Christian, we'll probably end up chasing it. And so like a good goal is to anything that we have to carry, trying to get that into a master branch as soon as possible is the most sustainable path for most of us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking the same. So I've been with the MCO repository. I've actually PR'd the rebase already. So I've sort of reordered a few of Vadim's commits and squashed them to make it easier. Before it was 27 commits, and now it's just 5 or 6. So it'll be easier to carry those, I think, in the future, because there were little fix-up commits before, and I just squashed them all. I hope in a way that makes sense. But yeah, that should be easier to carry forward and to rebase in the future as well. So the next big thing then is the installer repository, the rebase of that, and there's also one thing I want to get into master really soon, which is the migration to Go modules in the installer repository. So that would be really nice to get in to master as soon as possible as well. So I'll work on that. After this initial rebase right now. But yeah, I hope in the future those rebases won't be that much work.
So where are those issues around the masters listed? Is it in the Fedora CoreOS repo?
What issues are we talking about now?
The ones you're doing stuff on top of that are not integrated into Fedora CoreOS yet, extra.
So what I'm doing right now is we have these fcos branches in the machine config operator and the installer repositories, and they sort of have diverged from the master branches because all the new PRs go into master, but they don't go into the fcos branches. So what we need to do right now, sort of as a stopgap, is to rebase the fcos branches on top of current master to maybe cut another alpha release. And then in the future, we want to really make that divergence as small as possible. So we only have very few commits on top of master in the fcos branch that we can then more easily rebase and maybe do that more often than right now. So the gap doesn't get as wide as it is right now, for example.
So what they ask is there an item here on the engineering list that encapsulates that topic? That's what I'm.
Probably not really. I'll actually just add one right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, just so that we can keep track of it, because it sounds like it's something that if we don't track it, not that you're both not wonderful engineers, but it may just fall through the. That would be great. You add that. So there are a lot of other people on the call today, and I'm wondering if any of you so far have done any testing or have walked through the installation of OKD 4 yet.
Unfortunately, I have not. The main system I have access to for being able to do things like this is an overt system, and we don't have overt supported in the OpenShift installer yet. So I don't have that yet. For me to test OpenStack-based deployment, that's going to be a couple months out, but that is something that's on my to-do list.
Yeah, I know that the metal stuff should work. Overt is coming in hot. The GCP stuff, I think we're at a spot too where this is like where a lot of the little details, there's a lot of room for folks to help close some of those gaps. I think maybe Christian, this is a place where we could do a better job of listing out the things that are just known not working and need someone to go investigate, and a pointer to where they could investigate. Because I've seen, in OpenShift Dev on Slack and on Kate's Slack, we were definitely listing a lot of these, but for folks following along who aren't in the Slack channel all day might miss those.
Yeah, thinking the same, and also on the engineering board, on the project board on GitHub, there's a lot of sort of bug reports and things right now that I'm actually going to meet with my team lead tomorrow to sort of evaluate those and see how we get those just communicated a little better. And also, I think the next big thing we really need is to define a place where to report those kind of things. Yeah.
And we might,
In
I mean,
the
if we use the OKD issues list for now, we should maybe at the end of this call, like, get in the habit of triaging that, and then triaging the board, or maybe we can do that as a separate or follow-up item, like via the chat. But like, if we can help keep those lists up to date, or at least we can make sure that folks don't feel like they don't know where a place to jump in is.
Yeah, so Gelson is
Yeah.
saying that he ran a test on AWS. You have any feedback from that? Did it work okay? And how do we capture positive feedback? Like, yes, we tested it on AWS and it worked.
Yes, we
Layton
don't.
here. So I actually expected the AWS to work, right? Because that's the first platform that OCP was built upon. So that one
On the
expected
other
to
hand,
work.
FCOS hasn't been. On the other hand, nothing for FCOS-based deployments has been tested on literally anything. So, yeah, I expect everything to be slightly broken somehow.
You're just
Yeah.
negative there, Neil.
Well, I mean, I know for a fact one of the reasons why GCP is broken for FCOS is because they have a bug filed against me for the Google Compute Engine package that I need to update and then split out some UDEV rules stuff. And so that's been a thorny mess for me to try to fix for, I think, 4 or 5 weeks now. So, like, because we don't, in the Fedora project, we don't have any resources for testing properly these things on the various clouds. I don't have a terribly large amount of confidence in things working in the cloud environments. Just right out of the gate. I mean, if they do, that's fantastic. But like, I hold no illusions that it'll just quote unquote work.
Yeah, that's actually raises another good one, a good point, Neil. Like the places where there is, like, we don't use the GCP packages in our cause deliberately, because we don't want all the complexity there, and there's equivalents already in OpenShift to mitigate, to provide the core of the function, since it's not a general purpose operating system. So there's a couple of discussions that on those, we need to make sure we can connect the right folks, because like Abhinav or somebody would have been like, yeah, you don't even need that package. We should be bypassing that during both of those phases because we already provide something out of the box. So that's how do we make sure those kinds of discussions are possible and people catch it when they hit it? And then the other part of it, what I was going to say would be, so at least I was assuming we'd do an AWS and Metal CI promotion process, but as you start getting into the UPI and different Metal configurations, we're just never going to have the CI infrastructure to test it all. And so I think on that's another area I think where, from a broad community perspective, the only way that we'll be able to know that certain hardware configurations work is by someone trying it and there being a record. Do we have records like that in other parts of Fedora today for different
Yes,
hardware
we
types?
do. We do. So as part of Fedora QA, there's a open QA system that bootstraps and does automated testing for the various architectures, platforms, whatever that we have resources to support. And there's also a couple of avenues in which people can individually test and report that, and that gets recorded as part of the QA validation for Fedora releases, for snapshots, for Rawhide, for whatever. So those exist within Fedora, but Fedora CoreOS is so totally disconnected from the rest of Fedora's like overall process that it doesn't take advantage of any of that. And to make matters slightly worse, Fedora CoreOS has been operating in its own bubble in life cycling that they are not participating as part of the general QA validation process that is in place for Fedora releases. Not necessarily that's good or bad because the release cadence is different, but that means that they need to develop a means of like enforcing this kind of validation happening with FCOS in the same way that we do for regular Fedora and like we used to do for Fedora Atomic.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. This is Dusty. So there's a lot to dig into here, but I'll give a short summary. So more or less, we brought on the Container Linux team and they already had support for a lot of different clouds. They already had tooling to automate running tests in those different clouds, mainly the CoreOS, github.com/CoreOS/Mantle code base that includes a executable called Kala, Kola. And it knows how to launch instances in all the various platforms that they supported with Container Linux. We've been adding support to that for Red Hat CoreOS and Fedora CoreOS. So yes, we've been working a little bit outside of the normal Fedora ecosystem, but we've been using tooling that came from the CoreOS acquisition from Container Linux. The only problem with that tooling, it is very focused on ignition-based systems, so it doesn't really benefit the rest of Fedora that much, right? So that is why we are in a bit of a bubble, but we do have some answers for those pieces.
That's good. I wish that was written up somewhere, though, because I spent like 2 or 3 days trying to dig through figuring out how we were doing this, and I couldn't come up with an answer.
So, yeah, you can grab me an IRC afterwards.
Okay.
If you want to chat a little more.
Yeah, I need to poke you a bit about some of the stuff related to GCP, because I've been getting conflicting requests from people about it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and obviously Fedora CoreOS doesn't get away from all of the problems because we still have issues. Like, for example, right now we're building images for Google Compute, but we don't have accounts that we can use loading them, Fedora, and stuff like that. So artifacts exist, but you can't just take an image ID and use it.
Hey, Dusty, is there something wrong with your microphone? Because you're cutting in and out as you say words.
Maybe?
Sounds okay. Sounds okay to me, but
Huh, maybe it's just me. Oh, well.
so there was one other, Joseph was asking one other thing in the chat about any idea when Azure support comes back.
So I actually think maybe what we should do is we should have a issue in OKD for each of the platforms, including Metal, and then a list of current status, or people can add comments there. I think it's probably accurate to say any place where someone hasn't tried, we should create an issue and say, if it's a platform that anyone even cares about, we say platform readiness for preview, and then we say, is it working yet? And then folks can add comments if they do get it working or workarounds. That'd be more effective, I think, than maintaining it as the list in like the project list, just because the goal is to make sure that those get driven to resolution.
Yeah. So I know Donnie has.
Yeah, and specifically for Azure, so the problem there was we had to Vadim ripped out the Azure support because that couldn't be moved to Go modules in the installer repo. So yeah, that's actually the next thing I'll look into. So there may be news very soon, or there will be news, but they may not be good as well. So yeah, right now it's not possible because those dependencies weren't working with Go modules, which we need for Ignition Spec 3. So that was taken out, and right now I hope we'll get that back soon, but no promise there.
So I'm wondering, I know Danny is listening in, who's our other co-chair, and I know that Christian is really busy. So is there a list of our target platforms? And can I ask maybe Danny if you can add those into the issues?
I can create. For me personally, I would just I'll prefer to kind of try to match whatever we have at the moment, and I know AWS CI is fine over there. Maybe the libvirt to get in, and then Metal, and I think that would be a good good starting point maybe to kind of,
Yeah.
as a phase one, and then maybe, Azure and everything else, what we said. I mean, what I would prefer personally is not to jump the gun, and because, Azure is still, I don't think is fully baked into, on OCP. I'm happy to be wrong, but if that's not the
It's fully
case, then
supported.
maybe
I mean,
we shouldn't just
Azure
jump.
should be fully supported from 4.2 onwards.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be any issues with Azure that are like, oh, this bug crept back in or something.
Hmm. All right. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll
So
okay then. Mhm.
yeah, I wouldn't hesitate in adding things, because then like Philip is just coming in and saying he'll test on vSphere tomorrow without NXT. So just add them, and then if people come up, for me, the visibility of the different platforms is very helpful, because otherwise I'm stuck with notes in my meeting here to track where we're at when people ask.
Yeah,
And then people,
can someone take that action to go and make sure there's an issue in the OKD repo for every platform? Maybe give it a consistent naming pattern, repurpose ones if exist, and capture this info. Be really
yeah,
helpful.
maybe just
So
yeah, labels. Danny, can I tap you to
yeah,
do that? Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Should
You
have a
can
look at
always,
the Dora CoreOS tracker as well for reference. They also have an issue each for each platform.
Should we link those in to
that would
those
be
It's
issues?
great.
probably good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
yeah. All right, Danny, I'm saddling you with
Okay.
something. There you go.
All right.
Thanks.
Can always.
It's just hard to keep track of them, and I want to be able to ask other people if they can add in their words of wisdom and get them to test on stuff so that they get more involved in the working group as well. So hopefully we can do that. So let's see. Dusty, I know I had you on.
I think we lost her.
So it's not just me. She straight up disappeared.
I did disappear, didn't I? I had too many things on my screen, as you can all tell. Um, just having one of those days. I've been camping for the weekend, and this is my first meeting back, so I apologize. So I escaped after KubeCon. Yeah, Joshua Tree, which was absolutely gorgeous, but now getting back into it is tougher than you think. So, where were we at? Do this, and then so I was talking to Dusty. I know I had you on the list for something around Packet previously. I'm not sure if that's still a valid thing to be talking about. Can you?
Yeah, I don't have any updates there. I know that's something where we were going to try to get with Tom and check and see what the status was on our outstanding feature requests. I think he got back to us and said something about hopefully by DEF CON January they would be able to put out code that would satisfy our request, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Priorities changed. Try to catch up with him at least by then.
Is that
Well,
a
I was actually gonna
okay.
write up a user profile for a requirement for us for Packet. They have this repo for that. Yeah, I was gonna write that so he could sort of guide along that. But yeah, no real updates right now.
Sounds good.
Okay, so when you get that written up, can you add the link into this topic so that we have it
Sure.
here, or link it back somewhere so it's we can track it better, and maybe rewrite this open task here a little bit? That would be great. Driving right along here today. I think that's it. The other open topic still is resourcing OKD, and I still think that's on my to-do list to talk with engineering. So I'll hit that up. We had some conversations with that at KubeCon, but I think the powers that be are a little overloaded at the moment with the current release, so I'm going to try and hit them up this week, or after Thanksgiving, rather. So is there anything else we should be talking about? Christian, Clayton, Danny, anyone on the call? If
Hey
not,
Diane, this is Jay.
go for it.
I've got a little bit of feedback. So I set up 4.3 on AWS several times and only had like a minor issue, and I think it was just waiting for the API server, which I'm guessing occasionally happens, but which was like the first time, so the installer timed out when standing that up. The next two times I set it up, I didn't have that problem at all, so it could have been a fluke. The only other two questions or issues, suggestions maybe I have is, I think I put an issue out there around the documentation. Right now, the README links to the OKD 3.11 documentation, which is maybe a bit confusing because we don't have any OKD branded OKD 4 documentation yet. So I didn't know where we were on that. And then the other question was around like the update streams. So I know that the CI servers, like publishing the the nightly builds, but I wasn't able to attach to those. So I don't know if that's supposed to be working or not. I guess the idea that I would have would be like if I wanted to stay on a nightly build, I could with the update stream.
Yeah, you should. That sounds like something subtle. I don't know what that might be. The lack of a channel. I'd have to go back and take a look at that. I think like for now, the update stream stuff is without the branches being merged into master. Effectively, we can't really take updates from the rest of the stream safely. So I would say the moment that we have the stuff, the FCOS stuff tracking master, we should try to get to the point where we are pulling in all of the changes into the OKD stream. And then the moment we have that, I do think that the upgrade stuff, we should try to make that to get the stream from OKD working. It's probably something small and subtle, just it's without being able to easily kick new builds, it's kind of a not very useful tool. So
Sure.
And I know, and we haven't even had this discussion yet, which I think is the much bigger meta question, which is when the rebase lands, there may be some period where upgrades do not work up to a week or two, and so we'll need to sort through what that means for like the OKD streams and how we track them. So, but I mean, those are all probably things we won't hit really until 4.5, because I just think based on the progress we're making, it's going to be we land those branches onto master in the next 3-4 weeks, but we might actually miss the kubelet rebase and the control plane rebase.
I'm confused. Kubelet and control plane rebase?
To the latest version of Kubernetes upstream.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because those just happen, and so we either have like we're gonna pick them up or we're not, and in that period, there's usually the instability of upstream borked something with upgrades or something subtle is broken. So that period, the week or two around those more impactful rebases landing, and we have skew tests and all of that. So I think it's just trying to, as we slowly get the OKD streams running at the same pace that the OCP and CI streams are, we'll basically be in the spot where we can bring all that automation to bear, and then it will be much less of an issue.
So maybe this isn't the right question to ask, right time to ask this, but it just came up since it's come up a bunch of times now. What are we looking like in terms of the timeline of bringing Ignition Spec v3 even to regular OCP so that we don't have this divergence anymore between OKD and OCP?
It's a question for Christian. I thought he had said, the goal would be to try and get it in soon, in which case it's joint toleration, and we'll just have enough CI that we don't regress it until rel changes. And the rel work is basically predicated on Christian's work anyway, so. I mean,
Okay,
Christian is
so
effectively doing the Ignition v3 work for all intents and purposes.
okay,
Um, yeah, exactly. So I think the machine config operator team has put it on the agenda for 4.4, but I'm not sure how committed they are. It may be pushed back to 4.5, but I think the entire group wants to get it in with 4.4. The first step, at least in the MCO repo, is sort of get changes in that would allow the MCO, the master MCO, to run on both without really having that additional requirement of migrating from 2 to 3 for OCP. So that's sort of an additional step. The first step is just to have one MCO that runs with both but doesn't know how to translate. So if it gets V2, it'll just operate on V2, and if it gets V3, it'll operate on V3. And then the additional step is to sort of add a translator and migrate existing configs from V2 to V3, which is needed for OCP, but not for OKD, of course. So I think we'll be there very, very soon, maybe in a week or two, or maybe 3 weeks. But yeah, that should be done rather soon, at least in the MCO, having one canonical master for both. There on the installer, I'm not 100% sure how long it's going to take, because there's some problems with the Go module migration that isn't supported with Azure right now, and also some additional requirements where we just have to change up references to images in the RCOS JSON file in installer, and it's that there's a little bit of thought that still needs to be put in. So not entirely sure, but yeah, definitely that's one thing that I want to get done as soon as possible, because that rebasing and having two different streams is just a burden we don't really want to carry on with for long. So as soon as possible, definitely. Sure if that helps, but yeah.
Yeah, no,
Working
it helps.
on it.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions? I'm looking in the chat again.
Has anyone looked at code-ready containers with OKD and FCOS, or is that still like just fumbling along right now?
I believe the answer is no. We have good intentions. We just a lot going on and not enough time for everything.
That's fine. I'm just asking because we don't have an item on the board
So
about it, so
Yeah.
I have no idea.
So maybe in the issues, Danny, you could add code-ready containers to something that we need to test with OKD for. See if we can raise somebody to do that. And I will add a talk moment in here for ongoing for code-ready containers as well.
So that's definitely on the backlog. I haven't really prioritized it because there's just too many things right now we need to work out. But once we've sort of settled a little, I think, it's probably not gonna happen before we get the first proper, or maybe we can get it out with the GA release, the first one of OKD. But yeah, definitely not in one of the alpha stages, I think.
Yeah.
Also not sure how the actual support, even in OCP, because the code ready containers is essentially a one machine cluster, and there was definitely some operators going degraded, or at least the MCO going degraded in there. So I'm not sure if that's fixed even in OCP. But yeah, we don't have to block on that for OKD, but it'd definitely be nice if those issues were fixed.
I think this is just a bigger challenge, which is CRC is a lot of work to tread water because the core enablement, like, single node clusters aren't real clusters. So we have to do the minimal steps. I mean, there's definitely backlog work and initiative work tracking the um, cleaning up the install and bootstrap process so that we can eventually shrink down. There's just a bunch of steps between here and there. So this is, I think, if folks want to commit a lot of time to making CRC work on FCOS, that could be great, but it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of effort. I caution that um, if people find it more valuable than the core OKD distribution, I think that's there's certainly reason for it, but I think we should walk into it with open eyes that it's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to continue to be a lot of work for the next several releases.
Yeah. So, and this is my naivety in some sense. So the code-ready containers, in some semblance, is really replacing the mini shift and mini cube, easy to deploy and test process, because we heard a lot, not a lot, but a few times people asking, where's the mini shift, and my sense is that CRC was supposed to help with that. Answer that question.
It's trying to brute force mini shift on top of OKD and OCP, which is there's still a number of underlying things, which is OCP is about self-hosted. OpenShift in general is about self-hosted clusters that survive individual machine failures, and that's like almost completely orthogonal to what Minishift and Minikube try to accomplish. So it's not that those aren't important use cases. Like they're very important use cases, but they are a large amount of work, and we're not quite at that point in the open source project in general that we can just flip a switch and make it happen. The work to get to the point where we could reduce the expense of flipping the switch, I think, is the stuff that there's certainly be interest in folks helping out. It's a lot of deep changes to the bootstrapping and install flow of the cluster, which is another cost. And so it's not that it's a bad idea. It is that it comes with a lot of cost while we're still trying to get OKD up and sustainable.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you for that. So the other thing that I have open that's not an engineering task is writing an article for the Fedora magazine, and now that KubeCon is past, Neil, I'll tap you and Christian and start trying to draft something there, and share that with you. Maybe in the coming week or so, we can at least get an outline done and ready for Fedora.
Sure.
So
sounds good.
Look at that. I'm going to try and do something this week, even if it's just an empty Google Sheet or Google Doc, and we just start putting ideas in there for what we should go and write about.
Makes sense to me.
Cool. Right. Anything else? I don't want to shortchange you on your last 10 minutes in this meeting, even though everybody can see all the other meetings that are popping up in my window here. Someone is asking, do we still need to build it ourselves for OKD to work? And I'm pretty sure the answer is yes to that. But Christian is saying no. So you want to clarify?
Yeah, build what? The MCO or the installer or the machine OS content? What are we talking about here?
Joseph, I'm just going to unmute you. Go for it and talk, Joseph. He's not.
But
he's unmuted.
what component?
He doesn't
What
have a
component
microphone.
were you?
Joseph is saying he doesn't have a microphone.
Okay, that makes sense.
He's saying the machine config operator in the chat.
So you don't need to build that separately. That's included in the machine, in the payload, in the release of the alpha. And if you're happy with using the alpha version, which is sort of last week's date, then you shouldn't be needing to build it yourself. Of course you can and update the sort of the cluster with the current version, but right now, at least the FCOS branch of MCO hasn't really changed from last week, so it wouldn't really make sense.
So the only other thing I have is in my head is taking a look at the installation documentation here, and if there's feedback on here on questions like the MCO stuff, is there other things that we should be adding in here to make people or things that people want clarified here? And if so, you don't have to answer that question now. If you can let us know, there's more that we need to add into the getting started stuff. And you're welcome to put an issue against that README, and we'll try and add more to it.
Definitely, I want to highlight that this is the repository we want to use as our issue tracker. So any issue should be filed against that OpenShift OKD repo from now on, and then we'll triage the things there and get them on the project board. And what I'm probably going to do is sort of create issues for the tasks we have on the project board right now, and then remove them from there when we have an issue for it, and then just put them back on the board when they come up to be actually worked on.
And so this Danny, is where we would have the like Azure, Metal Cube, the other topics too. So yeah, cool. All right, then looking at next meeting dates, the next day that I would see is not the 3rd of December, the 10th of December for another meeting. Is 2 weeks cadence still working for everybody?
Yep.
Or do we?
Although we probably want to cancel the meeting afterwards because I think that's during the Christmas halls.
The 31st. Yeah. Okay.
I know I'm going to just probably be wiped out from New Year's Eve. So.
Yeah. All right. So that's good to call. All right. So then we'll do one on the 10th, and then we won't have another one until the 7th of January. So
that sounds fine with me.
Cool. All right, guys. Then that's all we have for now, and I'll put the video from this up shortly once it gets processed by Blue Jeans. And if you haven't added your name into the attendee list, I'll try and capture that as well. So thanks everybody, and really I will publicize the video that Christian did with the lightning talk, and really my goal right now, besides trying to keep track of all of these moving balls, is to get more eyeballs on OKD4 from end users who are deploying it too, so we can get some more feedback. As long as everybody thinks that's useful, and once Danny has that set up, if you ping me, Danny, when you get that set up, I'll try and do some outreach and get more people in there.
Okay, we'll do that first.
Yeah, and then I want to clone Christian. That's the other thing. So that's really, I think, the key here too, is getting more people to help that Christian's not doing it all. All right, guys.
Who's on PTO this week, which he has definitely deserved. I hope once he's back, we'll get a little bit more velocity on it again. But thanks for hosting today,
No
Diane.
worries. All right, not a problem. Take care, guys.